Can we have roll call vote?
Commissioner Sanchez?
Here.
Commissioner Butcher?
Here.
Commissioner Campos?
Here.
And Mayor Trujillo.
Here. Paul leads in invocation and pledge allegiance.
Join me in prayer, please. Heavenly Father, we just come before you tonight, and we want to thank you, first of all, Lord, for allowing us to wake up another day, Lord, and to live and work among our community. We ask that you guide us, Lord, in the right direction, to do the best that we can for our citizens of Lovington, for our city staff, for all the people that live and reside and work and commute in Lovington. We ask that you continue to bless us, Lord, with your guidance, Lord, and continue to love us. And we just ask that you watch over us completely as we go through this budget, Lord, that we do the best we can for our citizens of Lovington, for the employees of Lovington, and for everybody who lives here in Lovington. We ask this in your Son, Jesus Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico as the symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures.
Amen. Thank you, Paul.
You bet.
We have a motion to approve the agenda.
I make that motion.
Second.
That motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Moving on to public comment. You employees want? I know we have a full house of city employees. Anybody want to say something?
We know you're on.
Hey, this is an opportunity right here. Everybody good to go? Okay, we'll go ahead and move forward. Oh, go ahead.
Before we start,
Yes, sir.
While we're waiting on Commissioner Gandy, a couple of things I just want to stress to everybody who may be watching the IPR treatments that start on Monday. If the road is closed, please do not drive on it. IPR LTD is the company who's doing this. 48 hours in advance, they will be delivering notices to the property owners in the affected areas, advising them when their road's going to be closed. On the date that your road work is supposed to be done, they really need the street cleared and your vehicles moved by 7 o'clock in the morning. And just because they don't start on it right at 7:30, they're doing multiple roads on the same day. Just be patient. But once they remove the barricades, it means that the roadway is cured. Because if you drive through the slurry seal, it will get on your vehicle. It can get on your clothes. It can stain concrete. It won't come off. In addition to that, we did issue a press release earlier this morning. One of our city employees actually got a text message. They're fraudulent text messages through one of those spoof apps. It was saying that there was a citation in your name that you needed to take care of with the city of Lovington, also that their utility bill was due. We don't send out text messages. We don't, as a matter of fact, at this time, we don't take any payments over the internet except through Fandango with the Lee Theater. But we don't accept utility payments by the internet or by email. So we just want to make sure that all of our citizens are aware. We did push it out on social media, post it on our website, and it'll be in the newspapers as well. We also had an incident out at the Love Street baseball fields last night. An individual driving a stolen vehicle actually destroyed I guess when fleeing law enforcement, drove through one of the batting cages on the senior field, as well as driving through one of the fences on that field as well. So right now we're getting estimates on repair. PD has some leads. They haven't apprehended the individual yet. They did recover the vehicle, but the gentleman fled on foot. That's all I have.
Okay. Also, me and my fellow commissioners would like to also thank all the head of departments for being here today. We really appreciate you guys being here and listening. We try to make it as informal as possible, a little bit relaxed. So if you have a question or an issue, feel free to raise your hand or something. We'd be happy to address it as well. Okay. So moving to non-action items.
We've kind of changed the format, as you can see, to accommodate the video, but We're going to run through several things to start with, but when we get to the actual department-specific budgets, the department head or heads will actually come up here as well, so they can actually address you, but also so that the microphone will pick them up. But what we put together for the commission was right now, with all funds considered general fund to special revenue funds and utility funds, we're looking at estimated revenues of $26.4 million this year. Now, you do need to remember this is quite a jump from the previous year, but we do have we have a $3.5 million bond proceeds from there, and also a potential $1 million grant. So that's one reason why revenues are higher, as well as the expenditures. But you can tell from the slide that based on our closing revenues for this fiscal year, plus what we have budgeted, we've only budgeted about, I believe it was a $400,000 increase versus what our revenues were budgeted for this current year in our estimates. We would have an ending cash balance in the general fund of $3.2 million, but when combined with all revenues, we're looking at ending on June 30th of 2019 of $7.1 million in total. To explain the revenues, you can see that our revenues have somewhat stabilized. The FY18 budget, we did we did decrease our revenues. However, looking at the actuals, and I did provide you an updated sheet that we'll be going through here momentarily, but it looks like from last year, the FY17 year, we had actually received only $5.4 million. This year, with 2 months left in the fiscal year, we're looking at coming in at $6.8 million, which is a little over $1 million of what we budgeted just from GRT alone. Whenever you look at the breakdown as far as our funds, and these funds are special revenue funds, with the exception of our senior citizens and designated franchise. These are what our reserves for the fiscal year that we're currently in, fiscal year 18. General fund, we're estimating will come in at 38.87%. Gas tax will stay at 8%. The solid waste fund will stay at 40.3%, utilities at 15%, and then ambulance at 33%. Based on our estimated revenues that we should end this next fiscal year with, as everything that's been submitted right now in our proposed budget, at 32.9%. We look at gas tax will actually increase a little bit, as well as our solid waste and utilities funds the utility fund will actually grow with, in particular, the $1.1 million ending cash balance. That will make sure that we meet all of our debt our debt service obligations on the wastewater and utility improvement loan that we have, as well as the capital asset replacement fund.
Mr. Mayor, I have
Yes.
a quick question. James, could you go back to the first slide? I just have a question on that first slide, the one previous to that. Yes, sir. The ending cash balance that we have there at the bottom, $7,144,000.
Yes, sir.
How does that compare to the previous fiscal year? Do you remember? I know it's an increase, but how much of an increase? Do you remember?
Well, actually, in the previous fiscal year, if I may, your mayor and commission, we were, when we're talking a cash balance, it's taking the beginning balance of the year, adding additional revenues, taking away expenditures. So we were actually in a better shape going into the year versus where we're at right now. So what I'm trying to say is we have spent a lot of our cash reserves, and so we're growing them back.
Okay.
I can get that information to you.
All right. Thank you.
So whenever we look at our actual GRTs, and it's this first blue and white sheet, you can see this is just our gross receipts tax that actually goes into the general fund. We actually received our updated GRT distribution for the month of April. You can see we had about a $41,000 increase compared to last month. Whenever you run the averages, we're looking at an actual increase of 25.8% in GRT compared to last year. Whenever you also look historically how we came up with our revenue estimates, You can see that in FY10, which is the second column, that's when we did see a decrease in the price of oil and drilling activity. And that year compared to the FY09 year, we actually saw a 31.2% decrease in revenue. Which the following year, we saw a 20%, a 34%, so on and so forth, until it started to stabilize. Also, you can see how it breaks down. Now, these are off of the reports that we get from the state, the RP 500s. Our driving force is our retail sector. Right now in this fiscal year, we're looking at 23.24%. However, you can also look at accommodation and food services to add that percentage in there as well. When it comes to our second highest, when you look at it strictly on paper, we're looking at 19.19% for construction is what the average is. However, when it comes to the petroleum industry, it's almost it's actually a combination of three things: mining and oil and gas extraction. You then have wholesale trade and transportation and warehousing, which bumps that up to about 22%. Right now, our top three drivers of our economy, or our gross receipts tax, are going to be, of course, retail, followed by oil and gas, and as well as construction. Whenever you do look at this particular year, there's a little bit more detail on your sheet in the top column here. It does show where we did have spikes in particular construction, because a lot more of the labor force was there. For instance, this year in the February report, 43.44% of our gross receipts tax that we received that month came from the construction industry. Whenever we look at oil prices compared to GRT, you can actually see there is actually a correlation. You can see that in the first quarter of FY10, we did hit a low below $40 a barrel, and of course our GRTs did drop off. However, we saw almost a mirror image climb. We're following this quarter here, which is fourth quarter of FY16. We did see that drop, and you can see where it's starting to increase. We also got rig count information to see the activity. This is area rig count. When we're talking about area rig count, the way that the data set that we got was for drilling rigs in New Mexico, and then in Texas, they actually separated by their railroad district. And the area that we consider, well, basically the Permian Basin, is District 8 and District 8A. So whenever you follow this, it's a little bit hard to tell as far as rig counts, because when you break this down, the New Mexico rig count, our GRT, it does follow the New Mexico rig count. Whenever you separate that from the Texas rig count, and I know you probably all have a lot more knowledge as far as what happened in the third quarter of FY09 in Texas. I don't know if they discovered a new formation over there, but we saw a tremendous increase in rig counts from around 50 up to over 300. And it's maintained that as far as up until that last quarter of, or second quarter of FY16. Any questions on our revenues? One thing, I did attend the county commission meeting today. They were going over their budget, and as far as their estimated general fund and sales tax revenue coming in, it's the same percentage as ours. So that actually, I feel that kind of gives some validity to our revenue projections. Also, one other thing that we'll have to approve here at a future commission meeting is every year for quite some time, the county has provided the city financial contribution through a joint powers agreement. This joint powers agreement, it helps us fund the fire department, EMS, senior citizens library, so county residents can actually utilize those facilities. And for probably 10 to 15 years, it's stayed static at $240,000 a year. Today, the county commission did approve an increase to where we will receive a $300,000 distribution per year, at least for this year. And I'm hoping that that will still continue on at that same funding level. With that being said, that will actually help offset a portion of the purchase of the aerial apparatus that we will need to facilitate sometime in this next fiscal year.
Mr. Mayor, quick question.
Yes, sir.
James, what are you hearing as far as the projections are concerned from the people you've met with? What are they telling you about the projections? Oil and gas projections, yes.
Oil and gas, they said that it seems like it's going to stabilize and it's going to mimic our previous fiscal years. It's not, they haven't mentioned anything about any artificial inflation. And I believe that instead of putting down, for instance, on our, if you look at the historical patterns, I don't feel comfortable increasing our gross receipts tax projections by 20%. That's just very, very unrealistic. I believe ours was either 12, it was between 12 and 14% is what we looked at. So we still want to remain conservative. We're really hoping that it will come in, and we can, and that way we can get some projects done and even further shore up our reserves, because we do know that living in this area, that we do have downturns. And so our smart budgeting that we've done the past several years, it all led up to the fact that we didn't have to lay anybody off. We were able to maintain services. At the same time, we were still able to get some projects done when you would think that we couldn't, and it's because of smart projections and just knowing the local economy.
I'm sure everybody in the room agrees that it's always best to budget low and get more. So hopefully it works out that way. Can I get it?
I'm expecting it to.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions on revenue, sir?
You know, I know we got revenues, you're talking about revenues and coming around. Do we have any special revenues that come in, like, remember we used to have that injection well and so forth? Do we have that anymore, or where does that come into play? Or is that on another sheet on this?
Actually, Mayor, Commissioners, the saltwater disposal proceeds actually go into the general fund. They are part of the general fund revenues.
Okay.
So
Before
that
we
is
had it
still budgeted.
elsewhere, right, and then we just moved
Correct.
it into that area. Okay,
Yes, sir.
I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
How much is that goes in on salt water to our judges?
Let me pull that up. Right.
Yeah, that's what I estimated on an annual basis.
Right, it's between well, Gary's come up with 168. I think I have the right number right here. No. But 168 a year, 168,000 a year. You don't remember what it was classified as in here? Yes, that would be right. It'd be 168 is what we budgeted.
Sounds good. Thank you, James.
The next item, it's actually on page 10 of your book, is personnel. I'm sorry, page 9. With personnel, as you recall, in order to keep our reserves intact and keep folks employed, actually the previous 2 years we had did a frozen positions by attrition. And what this budget does include is the addition of those positions, or restoration of all those frozen positions, with the exception of the assistant city manager. So our general maintenance positions in the cemetery, street, and water department will be added to this budget, as well as a recreation position. With animal services, we actually have 2 part-time shelter attendants. Of course, we did add 6 part-time employees with the addition of the Lee Theater. And then we have a part-time representative in our water department to help during the surge time. So we're looking at adding 10 positions to our budget this particular fiscal year. This would bring our police department back up to full staffing. Actually, the only other department would be the fire department. They still will not have a assistant fire chief position at this point in time.
They're saying 8 will be part-time and 2 will be full-time. Is that what that chart is saying?
Well, actually, everything,
No.
Everything up here, we're looking at 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 full-time positions as well as actually 9 part-time
Okay.
total. And this does include our seasonal labor that we hire in our recreation, parks department, cemetery departments for the summer season to help keep up with the increased workload. We also are looking at a 3% health insurance increase, which is good compared to the 10% that we were thinking of. What does this mean for the employee? What this actually means is that for an employee only insurance, of course, the city right now we pay 85% of the premium. With this 3% increase, this means that it would increase that employee's out-of-pocket cost by $3 per month. The employee plus family, it would go up to $11 per month. That would be out of their pocket. So we've actually, because of our long-standing relationship with United Healthcare, plus I think it's also a direct result of some of our wellness programs that we have. We've been very fortunate to where we've reduced our major claims, and that really did help when we were looking at healthcare. Of course, with all the changes at the federal level too, who knows what's going to happen, but right now we were assured that as of July 1st, we're only looking at that 3% rate increase. As far, Commissioner Campos did ask to look at, in order to look at from a competitive standpoint, what would the effect be overall if we increase the city's portion from 85% to 90%. Across all funds, that would cost the city $77,829 more per year. With the current budget as presented tonight, which doesn't incorporate any type of salary adjustments, it would affect the reserves, as you can see, with a $53,000 increase to the general fund, bringing it to 32.2. We also put in the reserve impact if there was the $1.50 proposed hourly wage adjustment, as well as if you did merit increases as well. When we were looking at salaries, we did revise some of these figures after going back through the budget one more time to make sure that we had the most accurate portrayal of not only just revenues but expenditures. We're looking at, of course, this will be back on the agenda for Monday evening, but the proposed hourly wage adjustment, we were recommending $1.50 per hour to increase that starting wage to $14 per hour. For our employees, which the overall impact, if you look at $1 an hour, we'd be looking at $347,000 across all of your funds. Up to $1.50 an hour, it'd be a little over $500,000 impact to our fund. One thing that I'd like to point out is on our designated franchise and our senior citizens, those are restricted funds. Meaning that with the designated franchise, that's what pays the salaries of our youth center employees. That is derived from utility franchise agreements that we receive, about $60,000 a year. We can't take that money and transfer it into the general fund. So what we have to do in order to compensate, we can't go in the hole, we have to actually do a general fund transfer, which if you go back to your, I want to say it was page 1. The designated franchise line item, in order to support the youth center, with that designated franchise, we have to do a general fund transfer of $105,000 in order to offset it. So we don't have a reserve minimum in there, as well as our Senior Citizens Center. Senior Citizens Center is a grant fund where we can't transfer that into the general fund, but we are looking at a $120,000 general fund transfer to the Senior Citizens Center Fund, which helps to offset the expenses of not only salaries but all of the supplies in our matching portion that we're required to provide. We also ran merit increases, looking at if we did the hourly wage adjustment, you could also look at a merit increase. This would be assuming that all 154 employees got a merit increase as of July 1st. Of course, with merit increases, those would be done on an annual basis. So on your anniversary date. So it wouldn't be a hit all at once, but out of a 12-month period with that, you can actually see what those impacts would be to our different funds and the overall impact to the city's finances.
James, on the reserves, going back to the wage increase as well as the 5%, what would that put our reserve? I'm talking about the 5%.
Due to the reserves, if you did a $1.50 an hour increase plus the health insurance plus the maximum merit, it would drop the general fund to 23.4% or 23.46%.
Okay. And if we're just looking at 1%, it would be what off the merit raises?
Oh,
that's just max. That's just showing the max on it.
correct. I don't have the health insurance factor in there, but if you did a 1% merit increase, you would be looking at, it would drop the reserve, well, the $1.50 an hour increase plus a 1% merit increase, it would drop the general fund to 26.1%, which we actually set the reserve policy at 20% at the beginning of last year.
Oh, one other thing.
Yes, sir.
Okay, just the 5% and the $1.50. What are we looking at reserves on that one?
You mean 4%?
The $1.50 raise plus the 5% insurance.
Plus a 5%. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that just them two.
Right.
Without the merit.
So $1.50 plus a 5% increase to insurance, it would drop the general fund to 25.87%.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
When we look at our capital expenditures, it actually did increase because some of the capital projects did get left off of our spreadsheet that we have. They were correct in the actual financial software. But we're looking at a total of $7.9 million in capital expenditures this year, which out of the general fund, we do need to do some repairs to our animal shelter residents that was not covered by the insurance that we had several years ago. We're talking about some skirting and siding repair. We will be purchasing a replacement vehicle for code enforcement, in addition to completing the firing range fence, which we did receive a $50,000 capital outlay appropriation. So we can actually accomplish that project. Replacement of 2 police units and equipping those units. Also street patch vehicle to replace one of those vehicles that Bernardo and his crew used. In the capital improvement fund, of course the big ticket item is the fire station. Estimated construction of $3.2 million. We did receive word yesterday that it did pass the first review by the NMFA. It goes before their board next Thursday in Santa Fe. Gary will be attending that meeting as well, which it's a formality. They don't anticipate any issues with them approving the sale of those bonds. And then I believe it's at our May 14th meeting we would consider the ordinance or approve the ordinance to actually sell those bonds. And what that would mean is that by the end of June we would have access to the funds. The plan going forward, once we receive that, Chief Lizardo and I actually visited with our architects yesterday to put together the bid package, which we're actually going to do a qualification-based bid review to where we pre-qualify bidders, and then it also comes down to the cost of the actual project to make sure that we get a good contractor to actually build that particular building. In addition to that, with the remainder of the proceeds, we're looking at the Harold Reynolds irrigation replacement, sports field fencing, which is removing the chain link on our softball and our baseball fields and replacing it with R-panel. It'll be green. In addition to replacement of our entry corridor signs, using this plus some lodgers tax funds to replace those signs. Some various park improvements. We're looking at we wanted to resurface the basketball courts and volleyball courts at Chaparral Park and Martin Luther King Park. However, in looking at that, it may actually be cheaper to just totally rip them out and replace them. When we looked at some of the courts, I don't believe that they actually were reinforced when they were installed, so you've got a lot of settling and some very significant cracking. And trying to find a resurfacing solution that would work, I don't know. It may actually be cheaper for us to just pour a new slab.
Yeah, I know for one, at Martin Luther King, it's pretty cracked, pretty bad.
Correct. The volleyball court is actually in really bad shape. The basketball court over there, it has some really slick spots. I guess a lot on the three-point line. I don't know.
That's where I shoot from, you know.
Yeah. We also need to replace a paint stripe machine. We also have our IPR treatments, which we have actually through our gas tax fund. We have $250,000 in our local gas tax fund budgeted towards the IPR, as well as another $88,000 from our capital improvement fund that we'll be using, and we're hoping to get about the same amount of mileage. We're going to redo some calculations, and I think based on our road assessment, we can provide each commissioner some recommendations, but we do want your input on which roads in your particular district you would like to get done. One thing we did find out is that we did have a misquote on our ongoing, our IPR project that starts on Monday, and it worked out in our favor. We actually have some extra funds that we're going to use to that. We are going to address 13th Street. But in addition to that, think of some roads that, and please get with Wyatt so we can get that on the list, because we want to maximize the use of the contractor while they're here. We also have to construct a shade over the pump room at the swimming pool. It's the shade structure that's out there is in need of replacement, but also it was not big enough to cover it to preserve that asset. And then hopefully we will receive the rest of the fund, we'll receive our grant through the NMDOT to finish out Commercial Street. If we don't, we will probably have to shelve that project temporarily because it's estimated construction cost of about $1.4 million to do that particular road. Another capital improvement project that we're going to do through one of our special revenue funds, of course, the theater. The project that is next up is the remodel of the concession stand. We should have received our last quote yesterday to replace the air conditioners over there, so we'll get that done within the next month, this current budget year. But we have budgeted some funds to remodel the concession stand to make things more efficient so we can serve more customers, because nobody likes to stand in line. But we're getting some assistance from Main Street. Actually, I believe we meet with them on May 1st, so they can start working on some conceptual designs that form, function, but also keep consistent with the historic nature of that building.
Yeah, I heard it was sold out this past week.
Friday night it was a sold out show.
Yeah, that's great news. Go ahead, Commissioner.
They fixed the roof.
Right now, the roof does not appear to have any, the roof will need to be replaced, but seats to us when they replace theirs. So we're coordinating. They are a different model of seat, so there will be some modification required as far as the bolts that we have installed. We did finally hear back from the factory in China as far as getting the replacement or the parts that were missing on the chairs we inherited from the LCFA, and it was going to cost $23,000, and that didn't include shipping. So fortunately, things worked out. Star managed to get the Eagle 9, so with a little bit of work, then we'll actually double our seating capacity in there as well.
Did they place a tariff on there?
No, it's all plastic. It's not steel.
James, can you also get a thank you card and for us commissioners to sign to
Yes,
Eagle
sir.
9? I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. In addition to some other capital improvements, a lot in our utilities, a skid jetter and vehicle to carry it to, it's a wash truck. to help wash out sewer lines. We're looking at having to replace some sewer line off, it's between Central and Washington on Eddy, correct? Yes. We do need to replace some sewer line over there. I'm sorry, it's 2 pickups, 2 half-ton pickups. We had some remaining funds left over on one of our capital outlay appropriations, and we received a reauthorization to use it for our SCADA system for wastewater. So we're actually going to be able to upgrade our entire SCADA system this year, using 50% of it from capital outlay and the rest from the utilities fund. It's estimated to be about $84,000 total. We do need to increase the size of one of our monitor wells out at the plant through an NMED mandate. We also want to put in an isolation valve on Brian Erlacher to where we can shut down and isolate the water main on that particular road, in addition to putting an isolation valve or the inserter valve at the Avenue R water tower. That's the only water tower we don't have one of those in. We also, last year we budgeted $200,000 in LEDA funds towards the replacement of the water main on Main Street for when NMDOT reconstructs the roadway. To err on the side of caution, we went ahead and we didn't make that expenditure, obviously. They haven't started construction. But we left that LEDA project intact, but also included an additional $200,000 from our utilities fund as a contingency, since we do need to replace that main all the way from Avenue A up to Polk Street. And also, as for asset preservation, it's called cathodic tank protection. It helps eliminate some of the deterioration and rust. We also will put the public works facility remodel to make it more usable for our field personnel in the water department, in addition to repainting the Polk water tower. Both those projects were frozen previously. In special recreation, which is our youth center, Melinda wants to do some improvements down there at the youth center, to include some gym improvements and some other building improvements, and of course our gas tax, the IPR treatments, the $250,000 in IPR treatments, but also our Washington Street streetscape project. That's a tongue twister. But last year, both those projects, we received the planning funds from the federal government for the Washington Street project as well as the multi-use trails. The construction was supposed to already start to occur, but because of different mandates by some reviewing agencies, they shelved that particular project. They did advise that there is funding available again for the Washington Street project. So we did put that in this particular budget. There's about a $50,000 match for us, and it's sidewalk improvements, ADA improvements on Washington between Main and Love, and that's the only place where the funding can be used. I believe the total project cost to include the city's match is $354,000. But those are our capital improvement projects that we have slated for this next fiscal year. Are there any questions on those, sir?
Any questions from the commission?
I just have a quick comment.
Yes, sir.
If you don't mind, James, would you mind looking at the youth center? I know that floor has been there, and it's a different type of floor. I hear a lot of complaints on the actual type that it is.
In the gym?
In the gym, the gymnasium, the basketball court, and of course it's used now for volleyball leagues and so forth. I'm just looking down the line about maybe replacing that and maybe seeing what kind of options we could look at there. Not necessarily right now, but sometime in the future, if you don't mind.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
What does it have, got floor tile?
It's kind of like a plastic material. It's
like plastic, rubber,
plastic
hybrid
squares.
or something.
It's not wood.
No, it's not.
But it's not the tile, the square tiles that are asphalt?
No.
Asphalt. It's kind of like a plastic, like a
puzzle
hard plastic.
Puzzle floor.
Right, James?
Yeah, it's
a weird plastic.
It is a weird material. I don't know what it is. We'll check into that, yes, sir.
Go ahead, move forward. Thank you, James.
So now we can go into the review of our individual departments. Of course, not much has changed in our particular in the municipal court budget. There is changes in some insurance. There will be a couple of changes that the judge does need to make on some equipment replacement that she was waiting on some clarification for. However, the budget will pretty much stay the same. Any questions on municipal courts?
On record keeping, do they have adequate area just for record keeping? I know I walk in that office, it's so tight. I don't even know if they, Judge, I don't know how you get around in there.
The janitor department.
Yeah, is that what you do? I was just,
David has the jail,
yeah.
is that right? Do you have the jail?
Yeah, but that's maintenance for the whole building, not just mine.
I know it's not just for the whole building, but I'm not sure where we're gonna put the next batch of records. We don't have an attic.
Well, actually, Mayor and Commissioners, you bring up a very valid point. Storage is an issue citywide. Here at City Hall, it's the same problem. Having to shift things. We're running out of places to put things. And hopefully we'll eventually get to that period where everything can be digitized and electronic. And that would reduce our capacity, but there's some paper records that we have to hold on to. We have probably 25 boxes full of former employees where we have to keep those records, I want to say 30 years past their date of separation with the city. And I know that we had moved everything over to Laserfish electronically, but we were also informed, no, we can't get rid of the paper records. So I don't even remember where, I don't know if we moved those over to a portion of the evidence facility or over to motor vehicle, but we're getting creative with where we can do some secure storage. But we can definitely look and see what we can do for the judge, because you also run into the issue of, well, how readily accessible do those records need to be? We'll definitely look at that.
And, you know, going on to planning and so forth, we were talking about over there on First Street with the old library and so forth. I was just saying,
yes.
what might be an option at that point is what I'm saying.
Yes, sir.
If there's any options in that area as well.
Sure.
Thank you.
One quick question, Mr.
Yes, sir.
I noticed that the 2019 proposed budget for personnel is less than the previous 2 years. What's the reason for that?
That might have been a typo. I believe that you're right. That is a typo, Judge. The salaries should be the same. I think whenever we put that in, that was generated by manual typing. I'll make sure that I get the correct figure out to you guys.
And another figure that's wrong is the 250.
Supplies?
The
Right.
supplies.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Right.
The supplies and the travel.
Well, it was making you look good, Judge, for a minute.
I know.
You're telling on yourself.
The travel, last year two clerks did not go to conference. That's only my conference. This year they will go. So but I will correct all of that and have it to James to have for
Correct.
you before May the 7th.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you, Judge.
Yes, but any other questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Go ahead and move forward.
In our executive budget, essentially stays the same. Only about $1,000, about $1,100 increase from the previous year. That's my department, and of course, there's only 2 personnel there. That's myself and Brianna. In our legislative budget, that's actually where Anna's budget, as well as the commission's budget. Some of the items that we have in here, of course, we do have the $112,000 annual commitment to help offset any operational costs with the Health and Wellness Center, which should be open to the public in August. I know I've had the ability to tour the facility. It's very, very impressive. And if you guys have some time, I can definitely get with Mr. Shaw, and he can arrange to have you go through a tour. I think there was about a 3-week, in 3 weeks going through it, there's a tremendous difference. The pool's being installed right now, but it's going to be a very nice addition to the city. But this $112,000 is just one of those, if they don't meet certain revenues, that we have to offset it. But this is a not to exceed $112,500 a year. They have hired their director. He is from Missouri. Good guy. He's got a background, actually a degree in exercise and health. We've already been addressing lifeguard concerns that we have. It's not really going to impact us this year, but next year we will. We want to make sure that we don't get into a tug of war trying to hire lifeguards. So I know David and I have visited about this, and we're trying to come up with some different ways to where we make sure that our summer needs are met. However, we're looking at having to staff this place with certified lifeguards year-round as well. We also have our allocation from Lovington Main Street. Of course, we provide Main Street $50,000, $35,000 of which through the general fund, the remainder from lodgers tax funding and our Chamber of Commerce. We split their allocation equally between the lodgers tax fund and the general fund as well. And those are our largest expenditures, which falls under contractual services.
James, it looks like supplies is significantly less than the 2017.
Yes, we didn't have we don't have an election, and we had a couple of other things where we had to replace a bunch of smaller, printers, different computers and things like that. That's what came out of that particular budget.
Thank you.
Motor vehicle. Come on over, man. So our motor vehicle department, of course, their budget essentially is almost a flat budget. We did see the increases. Perhaps the biggest increase we saw was in personnel, and that was because of changes in the amount of insurance that we provided. You may have had an individual there who didn't have full family, they were single, so a lot of that goes into the benefit package that we have. However, Maria's done a good job. I've asked her to pull some things because with any motor vehicle department we have, we do get customer service complaints. And I'm actually convinced a lot of it comes with the mandatory queue system that we are using. It is different. There's a lot of confusion from folks because you can walk in there and be the second person in line, and 3 people who came in after you may get served, but that's actually, the order is actually set by the computer that we have to use by the state, and you can elaborate on that. I'm going to
Yes, it's definitely confusing to a lot of our customers because the biggest complaint is that a lot of them will come in and we'll have sat there for 15 minutes, and we still have that express lane that we've had for 2 or 3 years now, and that was to get those customers in and out that had the easier, faster transactions that are just registration renewals, those individuals that need placards, just MVRs, and that's so that the other 3 of us, because I'll work as a clerk as well, is the other 3 individuals that are working will help those transactions that take longer. And so that saves us a lot of time because we do get those customers that are there for the fast transactions in and out. So I can see where the customers are getting upset over that, but that is generated by the state. The system is ran by the state, and it's all of the motor vehicle offices, not just ours.
Any other questions on motor vehicle?
Yes, sir. One.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Maria. I know that a lot of people complain about that department. I think it's people from Hobbs come over here. I hear that all the time. So I think you guys are doing a great job there.
Thank you.
Pretty big jump from on your other operating costs from 2018 to 2019. there's about a $12,000 difference there. Is that just a typo, or is that the reason for that?
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
47.
On a vehicle, like if I buy a vehicle, what do I need to get a tag? I know I need insurance, but I think that's why birth certificate, for my passport, my marriage license, my water bill, or some kind of, I've had to do all that. Is that still what we have to all do?
Is this for your vehicle or for your driver's license, Commissioner?
Well, I think
Because
it's-
for your vehicle, if you already have your New Mexico license with the correct address on there, you should just need the, if it's a vehicle you just purchased, let's say from a dealership, you should just need the title, the purchase agreement, your proof of insurance. That should be it. I mean, sometimes there's other documents if there's errors or there's situations that we, that we might come across as far as if the previous owner passed, and so there's a lot of scenarios that we can go over. But for your basic documentation, it should just be your title, your purchase order, insurance, and your driver's license.
Did you have an answer for?
Yes, I
Commissioner
do.
Collins?
What the other operating costs are, we are required through our agreement to have certain bonds in place for our employees over there that originally those were part of the finance department. However, now they're actually allocated expenses towards motor vehicle. We also have to pay for the subscription for our security system over there, the alarm system, in addition to paying for employee emails. We've separated those emails out to each specific department. We also have utility costs, which before it was a newer building. It was hard to nail down those utility costs, but actually our utility costs this year, even factoring in additional costs for electricity, was about $6,500 a year is what the majority of that $13,000 expense is.
Good. Thank you, James.
Yes, sir. Any other questions? Moving on to
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner.
in our finance department, of course, we have we do see a increase in. Let me change the department here. 1210. Part of the reason why you see that 540, that should be a 245. I apologize. Yep. This number on the personnel costs, it should not be that.
So we should 245 instead of
Should be 245, yes, sir. We'll get that updated.
That's a pretty good jump too.
It is, it is. So, but of course with the...
Get some help, Gary. Not.
You can see overall the increase to the budget is, of course, we have some other operating costs, which are other operating costs, of course, include, that's the biggest jump that we have. And that's an incorrect number. That's weird. Why did it do that? I think it auto-summed. That's exactly what it did. That should actually be $479,000, which $247,000 of that is for our general liability insurance premiums. We'll make sure that we get the corrected pages to everybody as well. Our postage and mail, we have some employee training, a lot of printing, publishing, and advertising that we're required to do, telephone expense, utilities, workers' compensation premiums, but that amount should not be $985, it should be $479 according to the budget. And the new software works great, I can tell you right now. But with the finance department, we actually have the salaries of 4 individuals who come out of there. And other than that, are there any other questions that we may have when it comes to finance?
Thank you, James.
No problem. Dennis and George, why don't you guys come on up?
James, I'm assuming that the totals that we're seeing at the bottom, are those the actual correct additions on the errors?
This is, that previous one is probably incorrect.
Okay, that's my question.
Yeah.
Okay, that's like.
Because I know whenever we did the summary, we put this into a Word spreadsheet.
Okay.
That's the only thing is we haven't learned exactly how to export some of this stuff
Yes.
into a usable format and it's so robust. So yes, this was I'll admit, I did this.
No, that's fine.
I typed in the numbers and transposed some digits, but
That's fine.
we'll make sure we get I'm making those notes to get those things checked. So that's why we put first draft on it too, and I had it proofread. All right, so our Parks Department. Of course, we're looking at, in our parks, Dennis took over. We actually added this past year a second mosquito spraying rig through a state grant that we did receive. They did a great job abating those cattails. I know that they're starting to come back a little bit, but when the water's on the warm days, as Dennis explained to me, he sends the crews out there. We also did the disc golf course. So as far as this coming year, we're actually working on turf management and finding a new vendor for our fertilizer and pre-emergent needs. I think that we're going to probably stop using the one that we have now to get more bang for our buck. But we do have some increases to the tune of part of the bond issue that we have, that $100,000 in park improvements that we are planning. Of course, with tree replacements, I believe it is near the end of May, we've got the state actually coming down and they're doing a tree inventory to help us with those planting needs. But we do need to replace quite a few trees out there. Basketball court improvements, about $52,000 in miscellaneous equipment that and different projects that we can do at any of our parks. When you look at our recreation department, Dennis has tasked George with running the recreation department, which is responsible for not only the aquatic facility but our sports fields. The irrigation system is by far our biggest issue. It was put in a long time ago at Harold Reynolds. It cannot be worked on. I mean, there's no really plans that still exist. So using the same approach, we'll replace that so we can start to restore that turf, as well as some aesthetic improvements with field fence replacements. But that's perhaps the biggest increases into the budget was the $105,000 in planned capital improvements that we have. At our aquatic facility, it still stays the same. However, you did see a little bit of a reduction, but that was primarily due to some operating costs that we were actually able to decrease based on some historical actuals that we had. Are there?
James, so one question I have. Since we're most likely not going to use a little river bed that runs at Chaparral Park, can we just fill that in as a safety precaution so nobody won't fall in there at night or something like that?
Actually, part of our plan is eventually to replace or to restore that.
Okay, so we plan to restore it. Okay.
It's going to be. It's going to be one of those. It's not like a drop off, as you're aware. It's a gentle sloping ditch.
Mm-hmm.
It's not very deep, but in order to track down and keep water loss, we're looking at a couple of different methods. One method that we did see was the hydroturf. It's like a spray on concrete that actually they provide us the product and we do it and we line that, and then we can set it up with the same concept of running the water well over there, so we can actually have that fountain going and it replenish the lake. So that's that is one of those long-term goals that we want to have as far as restoring that, because that's just one of those unique features that the park had.
Mr. Mayor, one quick point.
Yes, sir.
You talked about replacing trees. You're not going to replace that big slumping tree because kids are riding that more than the other rides. I've seen them taking pictures over there. They're all over the tree. They're loving it. I mean, I don't know what you're going to do with it, but
It's about to fall down.
is it? Okay.
Probably the roots are
Old tree.
Yeah.
Talking about trees, there's a park. Did you say that the, maybe the New Mexico Forestry, whoever, do they provide us trees or somebody provides us trees?
There's some programs that they will provide trees, but they are saplings. This $15,000 is for your more mature trees. And as it's been explained to me, whenever we buy these smaller trees, they establish a lot more quickly, but you don't get the boom, there's a huge tree there. The larger the tree is, though, it takes a little bit longer to establish, but no, we'd have to pay for that. I know that Laura had obtained some trees that they should be planted out there at the shelter that we've used out at our cemetery, but they're very small, immature trees. I believe it's the Forest Service. It's for the state. They actually are doing an assessment where they will come down, they'll do a tree inventory, make recommendations on that tree really has reached the end of its lifespan. You need to go ahead and take it down and replace it.
Can we plant a tree that we'd like to plant? Like pecan trees? I think that'd be super. A few, you know, I know there's one out there already.
I mean, we could definitely entertain that. Those kind of become a maintenance nightmare.
Don't worry about picking them. I can get them.
Concrete and asphalt.
That's all the questions we have, James. Thank you.
Right. Our museum, of course, primarily what this line item goes towards is Rosa's position, who is the host, and then of course we provide them $20,000 to help keep Jim on staff there. The rest is through cleaning supplies and utilities that we have. Last year we did have the $9,800 in capital expenses, and that was because we repainted the exterior of the commercial hotel. Any questions?
They get any help from the county? Yes, sir. Nothing?
No, sir. Come on up, Norman. All right, so our senior citizens program, what we have, oh, okay, our transfers. That transfer in is actually an incorrect transfer. It should be $120,000 from our general fund. And the reason why we've reduced that transfer in is because we always kept a cash balance of about $50,000 in that fund. However, we've reduced that after discussions that Gary and I have had. But you can see we've seen, we did last year purchase a new van for the senior center. And actually this year we're looking at $52,000 to obtain a ADA capable vehicle to essentially replace the shuttle bus that we had over there, or have over there, with a wheelchair vehicle. So I literally just got the quote about 45 minutes ago that I've been working on since January. This is actually being paid for through a $35,000 capital outlay appropriation, and the rest through general fund transfers into the senior program. But Norman and her crew, they provide the Meals on Wheels program. They have 3 meals that they provide a week there at the facility, as well as a whole host of different activities for those who are senior citizens to come and participate in and play pool and exercise, yes.
And we serve home delivered meals. We serve both lunch and an evening meal. The evening meal is frozen. And then we serve that for the, Saturday and Sunday, our frozen meals, but they receive 2 meals for Saturday and Sunday. So our homebound are served meals 7 days a week.
And about how many meals are being served, do you say, on a basis of people-wise, about 200-300, or?
Average on a day, we're averaging between probably about 61 for congregate meals, and right now about 34 for the home delivery.
That's
So
pretty
close
good.
to 100 meals Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
And that's twice a day?
And it's twice a day for the home bound.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
You open 3 days a week?
Monday, Wednesday, and
Monday,
Friday
Wednesday, and Friday.
for congregate meals, yes, sir.
You are getting treated a lot better, aren't you, Commissioner Arthur?
I haven't been back.
I just thought I'd throw that on your plate
I
right
haven't
there and
been
see
back
what you
since.
said.
But I will be going.
You will be good.
And seniors are considered from what age? Where y'all, what, and
Ours
I'm a long ways from.
start
there,
at
but-
60.
No, that-
Let me hide your cane right here, brother.
We're under the Older Americans Act, so it's 60 years of age and older. And if you have a spouse that's younger than 60, then they're allowed to participate, unless the spouse, the person that's 60 dies and you marry someone younger, then you can no longer participate. And handicap, as long as they live with their parents, handicap everyone's, we also allow for them. And as long as they start out with their parents, if their parents pass, then we continue to give them services, especially if they receive home services.
It's pretty awesome.
How much a meal?
We just get a contribution. We ask for a $2.50 contribution. Everything that we do, we have to do as a contribution because we're nonprofit.
And it's subsidized, right? So all the meals are subsidized from the
Yes,
state?
through
and
state
federal?
and
Yeah,
federal.
yes,
Yes, sir.
okay.
And they have put a cap on there, but we're still.
Do we have any problems of reaching out to senior citizens that are not aware of the programs that you have at your facility?
It's in the, paper every Sunday. It's in the Hobbs paper, and now I don't know what day it comes out in the Lovington paper. We're also in the phone book at the front and in government. And
Reason why, have you seen your numbers trickle down or up?
right now, our numbers are on congregate, they're down, because we were closed that week, because we had the problem in the kitchen. So that has down, but our home delivery is up. And also the hospital is really good about, every one Tuesday, the second Tuesday of every month, they have luncheon out there for the seniors, and they ask for $2.50 because that's what we do. And they also reach out that way too.
Brother Bernard, you're not that far off from enjoying a nice meal out there, are you?
Yeah.
Like next week?
It comes sooner than you think it's going to.
Art, you just need to invite him.
Yeah, that's it.
I'll take you next time.
No comment on that.
And then I want to talk to you about travel. Okay.
Any other questions?
No.
No, thank you, Jim. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, Debbie. So with our libraries, of course, this is, we've only seen a little bit of a decrease in personnel, and that's because we've had some staffing changes. Tenured personnel transferred out of that department. But overall, the contractual services, let me pull that one back up. 101, 626. Contractual services would be 43. No,
It's a pretty good job too, right?
44 property services, 45. Okay.
I think it's just because I put it in a different account.
Oh, no, actually, that is the true cost of our janitorial services. It was actually in a different line, different category last year, so this was actually moved to the contractual services this particular year instead of property services. So that's why we have that particular jump in that section of the budget. But overall, we've seen a little bit of a reduction. Elin, we thought that the CSW at one time potentially was not going to participate in Elin, but those costs have actually stayed the same, and CSW, or USW, I'm sorry, they're still going to participate, which is a good thing. Which, if you're not familiar with it, that's the Electronic Llano Estacado Library Network. Go ahead. What do they do?
Well, as part of the Estacado Library Information Network, we the libraries that are in Jow, Hobbs, Eunice, the two academic libraries, and then Lovington, we combine and share resources, databases, with the hopes of keeping costs down, and internet access, provide internet access to the public, so that they can, those that don't have internet access can use ours freely. And so we share databases, we share resources, in just hopes that we can keep costs down for everybody. And we have couriers that go back and forth. If we want to borrow that library's resources, courier brings it over. You can return anybody's library resources to your local library, and it gets back to the home library.
We still have that half a day Saturday for the
Yes.
public people.
Mm-hmm.
That's until noon. Till
1 o'clock.
One thing, well, actually two different projects that we're working on, Mara with Main Street is helping us out with, is one, it's developing an entrepreneur program to where the library is more than just a place to go to check out books or take your kids for youth education. We have a lot of our patrons who utilize the computer lab there to develop job resumes, but we're also kind of looking at it as maybe a mini type of starting your own business type deal, just to get that education and assistance there. But Mara's working on a grant program for that. In addition, we're looking at wanting to develop the little pocket park on it would be the northeast corner of it. We're applying for some potential funding for there, just to make it to where the kids have a more inviting area other than just a parking lot to go outside and read books, or to have, you know, youth education programs and stuff. So those are a couple of things that are on the front burner right now that we're wanting to pursue to improve our library.
And there's a lot of that, I was going to ask, you know, for that, I know we're talking inside too, but there's a lot of that outside project, you know, bushes, all that stuff. Is that thrown in the parks, or is that in the library's budget?
That would
or
be
trees or bushes or flowers or whatever.
Right now, Mayor and Commissioners, the tree project is strictly going to be in those parks. As far as this other, we're wanting to find out, you know, how successful are we going to be in acquiring this particular funding for that. But we're looking at, you know, some planters, nothing too significant, I guess you would say, in phase 1 until we actually had the permanent plans to develop that particular area.
Thank you.
Next.
Okay. The next department is the cemetery.
Last stop.
It'd have been funny if it was at the end. Kind of in the middle there.
Well, you know, the fact is, truth be told, we have not annexed in the cemetery. So whenever you die and buried, you are no longer a resident of Lovington. So, however, Danny and his crew, they are essentially, they do have a flat budget. I don't know if you've been out there on any of the like Wreaths Across America or Memorial Day or Veterans Day, but we did replace that flagpole. Then Danny and his crew, they did a fantastic job updating the landscaping there, and then actually to honor, our fallen veterans. We actually have all of our service flags out there that they got some really neat flagpoles that they set up on those special holidays. Really improves it. I know we do have some work. They're doing a good job as far as some sticker abatement and other noxious weeds and plants, but it's one of our, I guess you could consider, it's a cemetery, but it's part of our park system. So people go out there and enjoy it. Any questions?
Like on the cemetery, like some of those graves, some are probably corroded or cement is bad and broken. Can a person replace those, or does he, who do we go to? We want to replace cement on a grave or something? Do we need to see you or city people?
That's probably in the old part. A lot of the
Probably, yes.
Some of them are cracked, but I don't know who we go to replace them. For some people want to put some in our newer part, and I said no, that's not allowed.
But on the old part, can you replace them? Can you fix them? I mean, whoever needs to fix them. Can they get permission from you or from the city to replace them?
You have to.
I know there's some that.
And there is some of them that need to be replaced. But
And I guess you would have to have access to what restrictions you have and how high and so forth. That's about all you'd have to follow is the regs, I believe, because that is your property.
In the rules and regulations, there's no enclosures of the graves, and that's in the newer stuff.
Good. That's all I'm doing. Thank you.
And I was gonna ask too, then, on your projections for the sprinklers that y'all are putting in, y'all are doing an awesome job. What are you projecting, maybe your final, or cost of getting that done?
We just put one in, which is the K-line system with the, not polypipe, but it's I think what they call it is hard rubber like they use in the oil field for the water wells. Polyline. And in Unit 5, we spent about $8,000 just putting.
And so y'all are actually doing all the work.
Yeah, we're doing the work, and we've got it through the old part, like from section A all the way to J, the K-line system. We've got it at Rest Haven, and it's a lot better in the watering system.
Oh, it is.
And them sprinklers squared 35 feet.
I was impressed.
Yeah, we do put out some water, no leaks. But I've got one other section like Unit 5B. We're going to put the poly pipe in and stuff. That'll probably be next year because the mowing season's coming on. Everything else. So, but yeah, it is nice. It costs some money, but it's better than using that aluminum pipe. It's about 35 years old.
It is.
That's what they used to water the Chaparral Park with. And
yeah.
We still use it a little bit. But
Thank you for your efforts. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
All right. Our next is what we call our Community Services Department, which is made up of code enforcement, planning and zoning, and animal control. Of course, in our code enforcement budget, with code enforcement, what we have, let's back up to animal shelter. Of course, salaries don't come out of this particular line item, so what we have are operational expenses, which what we've included in here are the facility repairs, $13,000 for the residents out there, in addition to the need to create some quarantine kennels that we're required to have for animal care. Quite a bit of funding goes towards our contractual services and supplies, which is for a spay and neuter program that we have. We do have to pay the veterinarian to do those operations. We do make every attempt to use euthanasia as a last resort. So Laura and her crew have done a good job as far as trying to cut that down, but it is very expensive. Any questions on our animal shelter?
How often do we have that veterinarian come in?
She's there 2 days a week. So the same days that she's here for services that she gives to the public are the days that we do the surgery. We do it during her lunch hour. And then my crew goes in and we assist.
So y'all are actually y'all are the assistants in
Yes, sir.
helping do the surgeries
Yes, we've
or
got-
shots or
Yes, sir.
whatever. That's pretty good. 2 days a week. And none on the weekends?
No.
Just during the week only?
Yes, just those 2 days. Originally, we were doing Wednesday half a day, and then she wanted to move it to Tuesdays and Thursdays. So we moved it during her lunchtime.
About how many animals do we store out there
We
during the month, or I know you ship
On
them
an
all.
average, we're looking at 20 to 30 all the time that are coming in that we're staying and going. We have transports usually at least once a week. Last week we had 2. We have 2 this week, 1 to Canada and 1 to Colorado. So we're shipping them out pretty quick.
And is this really, is this coming out of that budget of, well, I see your total budget, kennels, 8,000, facility repair?
So we have health certificates that we have to pay for. They have to be fixed. There's also the shots when they first come into the shelter. They have to have their vaccinations on intake. In order to participate in any of these programs for rescues and to be under, we have to follow their laws too where they're going. You have to have them vaccinated and stuff. There's a certain level of care that you're held up to a standard when they first come into your facility, which is the deworming, the initial vaccinations, and then we do the heartworm testing is required for a lot of them. Also, on the cats, we do feline testing. Anything of those natures, that also all comes out of this fund. So it's not just the surgeries. There's a lot to it. All the equipment, all the needles, all the vaccinations, all that stuff.
Thank you.
Or you didn't budget anything in capital purchases in 2018?
For the shelter,
Yes.
the only thing that was it put in there was the siding for the house.
No, the previous year. No, we
Oh.
didn't have it.
Because it shows a 0.
That's correct. And the Mayor and Commissioners, capital purchases or anything that, and a single item that's $5,000 or more. So,
And you guys are happy with your current veterinarian?
Yes, things are working out great.
Great, okay.
With code enforcement, of course, our salaries for even our shelter attendants, as well as Laura, Joe, and Justina, their salaries all come out of this. We do have some travel and training expenditures, contractual services that we have is for some software that we need as far as dealing with our animal shelter, as well as some code enforcement items that we have. Of course, our supplies and the capital purchase is for a vehicle replacement.
Seems it's a pretty good variance in the contractual services from
Contractual,
years.
that's because we did move some, part of that was for our Encode implementation at the end of the year, but also we've shifted some of those expenses over to planning and zoning, some in finance as well. I believe our veterinary services in the previous fiscal year were actually, a portion of that was coming out of the code enforcement budget as well. We're trying to mesh that to get our different expenditures and stuff in the correct areas to where it's a true reflection of what each, if it's a department or if it's actually a division of, like community services. So that's part of our issues that we have. In addition to the contractual services, part of that is a condemnation that we did and some abatements as well. So as you can see in our, well, for instance, the house on Avenue L, we actually had to have, it cost us right at $20,000 to have that house condemned and removed. We also had to do multiple property abatements throughout the year. So a lot of that falls under our contractual services as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Planning and zoning. We do have Crystal who's running this. Now you'll see there is a difference between the estimated actuals, and it comes from contractual services, and that's because of the MRA plan update that we're doing, which was funded through an NMFA grant. So that is not going to be a reoccurring expense. Any other questions?
Good to go. Thank you.
Oh, I did forget to mention, Keep Lovington Beautiful.
I didn't.
Yeah. So we are going to try it again this year, but to be completely honest, we only have one citizen volunteer who is somewhat active with Keep Lovington Beautiful. All of our Keep Lovington Beautiful efforts are because of Laura and Crystal, and then the rest of the code enforcement. Oh, Brittany, I apologize. And our code enforcement staff. If you recall, when we started this program up, it was a citizen-led effort. They really wanted to have this, but all of our volunteers have quit or lost interest, and we're having a hard time. Now, there are some advantages that we have. We can get some staff training to bring it back, but it is a citizen-led effort, and it's one of those, like I told Laura, I said, if we can't increase our citizen participation and have them actually doing it instead of having Laura and her crew do all of the work, then it may be one of those things that we don't need to fund next year, because this really is meant for the citizens to get out there and get involved in the community.
Should we have maybe a little bit more advertisement for the citizens? I mean, try to get them back. I know some of the things they just don't
You're
come
gonna
out
cut
and
into
say.
weekend soccer and baseball, movies. Really? Come on, you're gonna take up your personal time?
Oh, yeah.
I know, well, Mayor and Commissioners, one of the things that, Laura and I did discuss is the fact that we need to get out there and recruit. We can always ask, we can tell them about the benefits of the program, but if they won't, commit to helping to volunteer and helping to step up and run this program to get that citizen engagement and interest, I mean, there's only so much that we can do. But I know that I see the value in it, but unfortunately, Laura and her staff are overtaxed. They've got a lot of responsibility, and we threw this on, and I'm willing to give it one more year.
I agree, because we've added a lot to your staff with new ordinance and so forth, so I know you guys are overwhelmed.
It is.
Definitely.
It's a great program, but we have a lot on our plate.
Yes, that's correct. And we appreciate what you guys do, we really do.
You had one more.
Oh, yes, sir.
Are we going to have a clean pickup trash day again, so we can all volunteer? Probably?
Yes, May 12th. May 12th, I'm looking forward to seeing you all out there. We are going to have the pickup day. We did a little later this year, considering the winds, and the prom kind of moved a little weird this year. So we changed it and hoping that the weather that will be better and everything, and to accommodate, we also had some training this year that we're having to attend. So May 12th is going to be our cleanup day. So we're looking forward to seeing you. We're going to have a scavenger hunt this year, and we also are going to do a trash hockey tournament to get people involved, and hopefully we can get some volunteers, and hopefully David's wife will come out with all the kids again this year. That was awesome.
Maybe Dave will make a cake for us.
Just a note, those aren't my kids.
All right, so our police department actually is split between general fund, that they also have the law enforcement protection fund. This year, of course, we're utilizing this to equip the 2 new vehicles that we have, in addition to paying for our fleet tracking solution through Verizon that the chief has access to. But this increase, it does include the addition of those two restored patrol positions. We also have $245,000 in capital purchases, which is 2 vehicles. The evidence garage, which would be through the capital outlay, capital improvement fund, which would allow us to store vehicles over there at our evidence facility, which would really only after that, the only other thing that we would need to do would pay the parking lot, but that could be done at a much later day. And then, of course, our firing range security fence to surround the perimeter. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to go out or if you've ever been out to the police department firing range, but Chief and his crew have really done a lot of work out there in regards to getting a new building, that was donated, moved in, set up with decking, and as well as some really, I have yet to go out and even get to play out there with the active targets. But they've done a really good job over there. Chief, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, just to add, on the updating up there, we've also included all the electrical and the sewer system out there as well. So it'll be a new facility when we get done.
Chief, who else is using that facility?
Lee County Sheriff's Office, GEO, State Police, and once in a while, depending on the scheduling for if the Hobbs Range is used or not, the Academy sometimes will use it. The National Guard was using it. They haven't used it in a while, but they at times use it as well.
Are they contributing to that facility themselves?
GEO provides a lot of the labor for a lot of these projects that we do have going on out there. The Lee County Sheriff's Office, once in a while, they'll supply some of the materials as well. But other than that, no, sir.
Thank you.
David, on your new project you got going on across the street on the evidence side, how's that looking? How's that? I mean, what are you projecting this coming year on everything?
Well, like you mentioned with the evidence garage, that'll be basically the only thing we have left besides the paving if we want to go that route. The facility will be put up. The other one's already up and going. We already have some items in that one as well. The security system will be put in. The first part of the next fiscal year was some money that was allocated this year on capital outlay that was transferred to next year's.
And that includes cameras and so forth?
Correct.
Yes. Okay.
Other than that, that should be it out there.
Great.
How many are you down right now, Chief?
Excuse me?
How many officers are you down right now?
Not including the 2 frozen positions we have. We have 2. We have one in the process that next week he'll come in and start doing his psychological and polygraph and stuff, and then we'll go from there.
Good. Thank you.
So,
any other questions?
Thank you, Dick. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, we started early.
Mr. Grass Fire himself.
Mayor and Commissioners, our fire and EMS actually are separated amongst 4 different funds. One thing on the general fund that is an accurate number on the personnel cost. The biggest increase perhaps is the changes in insurance coverages. We had single employees who have gotten married. They've also started families, so that increases our health insurance costs, as well as several individuals over there obtaining different levels of certification and licensure. Of course, the largest increase in that budget, of course, is going to be the addition of the 17th Street Fire Station, which it's not a, well, it's a new station, but the existing station will stay in operation. So we'll actually have 2 fire stations in the community. In our fire protection fund, which is a state fire marshal administered program, which the proceeds or the revenues generated off of property owner insurance is allocated, and the amount that we have is projected for this year in grant funding is $88,000, which that can only be used for operations other than salary and benefits. So the chief does have a lot of his fire, or mainly for structural fire protection, a lot of his operational expenditures are shifted over to that particular budget. In the EMS department, of course, this is one of those special revenue funds where we actually do bill. We're projecting flat revenues compared to this year. I know there's been some changes in the insurance industry, which I know if you look at our revenue sheet, the monthly collections are lagging behind. That's because of the implementation of the new coding system and what Medicare and Medicaid, our biggest payers, are doing. They've made different changes. So, as a matter of fact, I spoke with Carl, the EMS coordinator over there today. He did visit with Molina, which is one of the Medicaid providers, and we actually have $75,000 in pending reimbursements that we should be receiving very shortly. So with the insurance industry, you never know. Sometimes it takes a while for them to collect those revenues. However, the capital purchases that we do have in this particular budget, they did get cut off down on the bottom, but we do need to add another ambulance, as well as replace one of the staff vehicles at the fire department for use over there. Those are our two biggest capital expenditures that we have, and of course we do have an annual, which our EMS grant that we receive, that goes towards the service on the power load stretcher system that we have, that we executed under a second lease agreement with this just a couple of months ago. Do you have anything to add?
James,
Sir.
with the projection of if all goes well with the bond and so forth, and we do obtain the new facility, what do you envision on the very old facility? What do you see about the structure part of it? I mean, it's just a shell. I didn't know if it's even cost effective to even keep it anymore after we obtain the new one. I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Go ahead.
Currently, the old fire station, the original fire station, is being used for additional hose and other equipment that we have to keep in stock when we have to wash hoses after a fire. We have extra that we use and it's stored in that building. So we also keep our grass rigs out there, mainly because of the height of the building going in. You know, we got some issues there, but other than that, that's what we use it for, storage, and it has a weight room, workout facility, and then just additional storage.
Okay, so we plan on still utilizing theirs?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to check.
Yes, sir. It's actually not a shell. We have vehicles over there.
The paint's still the same. I just say for all
It
these
is,
years, it's still the
yes.
same paint. They had some good paint in them back in the day.
All right. Any other questions for the chief?
Do y'all use it on weight? Y'all?
Yes, sir. The crews go over there and they use the weight room. We also keep medical records over there as well in one of the rooms.
And if I may, Mayor and Commissioners, that may actually become, a central records storage area as well once the new station is open up and online. And he shifts different resources. We may actually come across some storage space that we can utilize over there as well.
Okay. Any other questions from the Commission? Thank you, Chief. Really appreciate you.
Bernard, why? Come on up. So what we have, Mayor and Commissioners, in our street budget, of course, this is funded through primarily general fund, but also an allocation from our special gas tax fund. Perhaps the largest project that we have are the $1.9 million in various street sidewalk improvements that we have. Right off the top, the $1.4 million for the commercial street project. We also have the CDBG program, which is going to encompass reconstruction and sidewalk improvements on 2nd Street from Jackson to Avenue D. We also have Avenue H from 2nd to 5th Street. And then the worst part of Jefferson Avenue from 13th to 17th Street. I did explain to an individual the other day when we released the IPR treatments, they said, why can't we get that section fixed? And it's a different type of grant funding. There had been some delays. The design was supposed to be done back in December. However, the state made us come back and do a contract amendment because in the actual purchase orders and quote that we received from the engineering firm, it included the construction and staking services, which they require us to have. but the state said, wait, that wasn't part of the original estimate. So we had to go back and get signatures. Our goal right now is to have the plans. The plans are actually at 80 or 85% completion right now. Wyatt will be meeting with the engineering firm next week, and we intend to actually go out to bid for that project in June. Bid will probably be a 30 to 45 day process, so we want to get started on that immediately. And in addition to that, a striping machine and the replacement of a vehicle that we can use for patching. We also have the additional IPR treatments that we had discussed previously. Any questions on our street department?
Good to go. Thank you, guys. Sure appreciate it.
We'll get solid. All right, so two different line items that we have, our budget items that we have is, of course, funding for our Troy Harris Center, which houses Main Street, the Chamber of Commerce, and the EDC. This just covers the various services as far as electricity, janitorial services, just to operate the actual building. The Denton building is the same thing, which houses the magistrate court. This is to pay for the biggest expense, of course, is janitorial services, with the remainder just being the cleaning supplies and utilities as well. Our youth center. Of course, Melinda is actually flying back from Washington, D.C. She is part of I believe it was the NMOST. It's a New Mexico organization for youth. And they flew her out there for a national conference on this. So she's bringing back all kinds of good ideas. Of course, this is funded through our Special Recreation Fund, which also does take a general fund transfer. And this year we're estimating a general fund transfer into the Special Recreation Fund of almost $60,000. Really the only changes that we have, of course, Special Recreation pays for operations except for salary and benefits. But as you can see, we do have the gym improvements listed as our capital improvement expense. Melinda is also working on what they call a STEAM lab, which would be a program developed to increase the awareness and education of our youth in regards to science and technology, engineering, mathematics, which it would be a computer lab, it would be a tech lab, but it would actually provide instruction. It would be more than just a computer lab where you go do your homework. It's actually a year-round program that she's currently working on developing. Those costs are not incorporated into the budget right now because she is seeking outside funding for those, for that particular endeavor. But we are still seeing a good volume of youth utilizing the youth center. They stay very, very busy down there.
Great.
All right. And our theater, Star, well, Star had to leave because she's showing a movie tonight. So anyway, of course, the estimates, if you recall, we didn't start operation of the theater until December, so there is a very big difference in our revenue estimates as well as our expenditure estimates, because the 2019 proposed is what we're looking at for year-round operations. It will require a transfer in of about $21,000 from the general fund. And that's just because of the capital improvements that we need to make over there. It's the primary reason. But based on our attendance, our average attendance, versus what our actual costs are, we feel pretty good about these numbers. I know that Star is getting way out ahead and trying to book movies far in advance so we can entice people to come in. Maybe wait a week or two before you go and see that movie premiere outside of town. However, we do, like I said, the concession remodel, look at the roof. We also need to add another point of sale system once we do get all those that design work done. But we feel that this is a very reasonable and realistic budget.
Are we currently working on where we can seat upstairs again?
Right now, no, sir. That piece we need to figure out.
That's my historical site?
Yes, sir. I know I need to visit with a couple of folks on that. I don't know if we can open that up with ADA. That's my only, I've got to get some of those questions addressed since it is a historic building. But we do actually have enough seats to replace those up there. But I did have the opportunity, we actually had I think she was the executive director. It's a foundation that actually owns the historic theater over in Levelland. They've kind of done things opposite. They came over to see how we're operating it. But they actually, I think their theater was built in like 1920. They have an upstairs area that they've actually remodeled so they could have those private events. So we want to get over there and see what they've done with that upstairs area as well. But that's kind of at a lower priority. I think we're working a lot of the kinks out. So it's doing, honestly, I think it's doing a lot better than what we actually anticipated.
Good.
From a cost standpoint. Yes, sir.
It said you have 6 positions. Is that how many people are working in that?
Yeah. Yes, sir. We have.
Are they full-time?
No, sir.
Part-time.
No, sir. They are part-time, and unfortunately, we don't generate enough revenue to support a full-time position. It would be nice, maybe later down the road, but right now we do need to keep it part-time. But that's Star's position, who's the manager, and then we have the five theater attendants. We haven't quite come up with a definitive title for that particular position yet. Theater attendant's the word of the day today. So, but those are all. We have some kids who go to school fixing to graduate as well.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions on the theater?
Thank you, James.
No problems. All right, Public Works. Public Works person out there at the job site making sure that the testing is done correctly and verifying quantities. It's a mandate from the federal government as well as it's coming down through the state. But she actually is our special projects assistant when it comes to that. But she stays out at the 17th Street site. She's also kind of the eyes and ears down here on our Washington Street. When CDBG, she's going to be very, very busy when CDBG breaks ground. We also have our facilities maintenance, Lorenzo Gallegos. So the majority of our costs are in those salaries, but we do have some supplies and some other operating expenditures that we have for that particular department. And they don't have a concession stand at Public Works.
Would you get that away?
As I said, this is a draft. So Darren, why don't you come on up? So our water department, we've got a lot of projects lined out in our just the water department alone this year. You can see that we've added salary and benefits to our, as well as had some insurance changes as far as personnel costs in particular. However, our biggest thing, of course, is our capital purchases. Would like to mention the debt service. That's for the improvements on the NMFA loan that we have, which that's our annual debt service. But the 1.2, we did cover those earlier when we went through our capital projects. But Darren and them continue to, we're trying to get more and more people certified. I know we set the thing, we want to get 2 individuals at their level 3 water certification. I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong page. Perhaps the biggest thing is just going to be our coordination of efforts with NMDOT when they do start the Main Street reconstruction, because we definitely want to take advantage of that, which we have yet to see any type of final design on Main Street. I know that the engineering firm, WH Pacific, is supposed to be down here the first weekend in May to meet with our Public Works Department to go over some of those plans, because it sounds like they are starting to narrow down the design. Have no idea what they're going to come up with, but we'll definitely keep everybody informed and stress the need for more public meetings so they can get public input. Any questions?
One thing I would like to see, and I've noticed, because I, obviously work for the electric company, is for the city, for us to not interrupt services. Like I had to give you a call the other day. If the city would just we would look into replacing all the electrical metering boxes with bypass handles. That way there's no need to call y'all out for overtime service if it burns up or we have to replace it.
Are those the disconnect boxes?
Yes.
Below? Okay.
And that would be a good thing for the city to incorporate. It would save a lot of time and money. Overtime, I know they don't want to hear cut down overtime, but hey, it's a part of it sometimes. But I know we do here in the city have a lot of old, and it really did a lot, especially on the water stations and stuff like that.
Yes, sir.
There's something to look into.
James is mentioning the design regarding the state. Are they still open to suggestions, public requests? Do you know?
I think we're going to have that question answered when we meet with them that first week in May.
Okay.
I do not know at this point.
Okay. I've heard a lot of concerns about the proposed design.
Right.
I'm sure you have too. Very good.
Okay, our wastewater. Thanks, Darren.
Thank you.
Mike?
Thank you.
So with our wastewater department, of course, seen a little bit of an increase in supplies, as well as some property services, which I'm trying to remember what that is. Let me log back in. Some vehicle. We also added a fleet maintenance program, fleet management through Verizon, the same program that's successfully been tested with our police department. It actually provides us with tracking of our vehicles. So that way, if we do, we want to know where some of our folks are if they're out in the field. We have real-time GPS coordinates. It helps cut down on some maintenance costs, as well as if we do get complaints. I know since Chief has implemented that on a test run over at the police department, somebody calls in and says, "Hey, this officer was doing 50 in a school zone." We can actually find out during that time period what was the actual maximum speed this vehicle reached, and it gives you that real-time information. But the biggest thing is that it helps us keep an eye on our assets, as well as reducing some maintenance costs, because it keeps us apprised to any irregularities we may have. In addition to the capital purchases that we have, of course, the skid jetter that we have to mount on a 1.5 ton pickup, we do need to replace and add one pickup to our wastewater department, our monitor well 5, and our SCADA system upgrade. And I don't know if you gentlemen have anything to add.
You just want to add about the skid jetter replacing
yeah, the wash trailer mounted jetter that we have now is going on 11 years old. It's lost a lot of pressure. It's taking a lot. It costing us more to maintain it and to keep it going. And the reason we need something small like that instead of the vacuum combination truck that we have is some lines in this city are real shallow. And if we try to use the truck, it will blow back up into the residence or into the business. So we need to have something small like this. And the reason I was trying to going with the skid mounted on a truck is it's a lot easier back in and out of some of the smaller alleys than when you're trying to back a trailer. Nowadays, there's a lot of people that don't know how to back a trailer.
don't have to drive forward.
Yeah.
And also I was gonna add, the SCADA system is actually for the lift stations.
We have 23 of those, correct, sir?
22.
Any questions for wastewater?
Nope, thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Look good.
Solid waste. It's our next and last department that we actually have. So with solid waste, of course, the one big change that you see, of course, is the waste management collections. We're going to see that this is a better cost than what we have with the increased activity that we have. It's going to actually mimic the 2017 year. But in addition to just for our biggest expense of the collections, of course, we do have our convenience center that's in operation. If you haven't been out there lately, of course, we did put up the fence to surround the facility, and that was not to hide the mess. If you haven't been out there in quite some time, Bernardo and his crew have just, it's a difference between day and night. It's cleaned up. We don't have a lot of the debris that had collected out there for decades with junk metal, broken down vehicles. All of that has been cleaned out, and you've got a lot of empty space out there now, as well as just neatening up the area around where the public can come in and dispose of their trash. You guys have done a great job out there as far as that, because I know it used to be an eyesore, but now it's very clean and a very efficient operation out there. So, any questions for Bernardo?
Thank you, Bernardo.
The remainder of the budget that we have, of course, starting on page 63 of the summary, this is just going through the various different funds. Some of these are pass-through that we have, such as the judicial education, the fees that are collected that just immediately gets paid back through the state. We have a summary on our capital improvement. It just kind of gives a little bit of a breakdown. Lodger's tax. Lodger's tax has increased. I know that our 2017 actual was only about $56,000, but that was before the Comfort Inn had come online. We've actually, we're looking at finishing this year with $114,000 collected from lodger's tax. So last year, if you do remember, we did reallocate some of that, and we're allocating some toward, or the legally required amount towards the marketing and advertising and supporting events. Some of it we use to help fund our Chamber of Commerce, our Main Street program, in addition to our sign replacement. But we just left that revenue projection flat for this year. We're hoping that it will definitely increase as well. But the hotels and motels are starting to fill back up again. And other than that, the only other fund, special gas tax fund that we have, we show that we're projecting just a slight increase in the revenues that we'll be getting in. We do have a grant, the $334,000 coming in for the ADA improvements. However, we show that we are going to be expending that money locally here on those different projects. And with Local Economic Development Fund, you can see that that fund, since its inception, which you would have to turn back to the front, but that particular fund is the 1/8 of 1% tax. It was actually first collected in September of 2010. Year to date, it's collected $2.4 million. This year, we are projecting that it's going to bring in about $332,000. Of course, we use this through our EDC. This is how we fund our economic development program over there. We also have $200,000 allocated towards Main Street utilities replacement, and then $5,000 right now dedicated towards GIS software for economic development purposes. The rest of this is used to help provide some incentives to recruit new business and manufacturing. The rest of it, instead of providing everybody 2 booklets, this is all one document. You can see the revenue. It provides you the line item detail. And then in the back you have about 11 pages after that, then starts the line item detail for each one of the budgets that you have. But we will definitely, I know Gary's been taking notes, I've been taking notes, identifying some of those errors on the slides. We'll make sure that we update those in addition to any particular changes that the commission may want to make, to where the summary document, once we adopt the budget, that's what our actual budget is. It makes it a little bit easier for the citizen to actually pick it up and find out just exactly where our taxpayer dollars are going. And that is the end of our presentation.
What date do we have scheduled for the final approval of the budget?
Of course, we do have to have the final budget up to Santa Fe before June 1st. We will have the budget as a discussion item on Monday night's meeting. In case the commission or if the public would like to comment on it, it's discussion only. At the May 14th meeting, we will have it as an action item to where you will have the opportunity to adopt a resolution to submit the interim budget. If you don't feel comfortable at that time, the absolute drop dead date will be the 28th of May. We have to adopt the interim budget at that time, but the sooner the better. The advantage is that if we wait until the May 28th meeting, we'll have 1 more month of gross receipts tax revenues to help solidify our estimates. And really it's just a matter of entering in any additional changes. But I would just request if there's any changes that the commission would like, please get them to us so that we can factor those numbers in.
Any other questions by the commission?
I think we're good.
Do I have a motion?
If I can add one thing, I know this has been a good budget year, I guess you would say, as far as the development of the budget, with the fact that I know that we've made the switch over to Encode, and I know our department heads have really embraced that. Some of them have just really learned the system, but we have all of the department heads. It was a totally different format this year. They learned how to use the software, and without them, they actually all entered in on their department head proposals. Really, we only had to cut a couple of projects out that we felt that we could find funding somewhere else for, but they all turned in very good budgets that were very realistic. And I believe that the team that we have in place now, they all understand the budget a lot more, other than just throwing numbers in the hat. It's a very well thought out plan for their department for this year, and also setting things up for future years as well. So I would like to publicly thank the department heads for all the work that they did on the budget this year.
And we would too. Also, when I look out into the crowd, I don't see no new faces, which is a good thing. And we want to appreciate you guys staying with us through rough times and good times, and hopefully good times to come for all of us. And we appreciate you guys working as a team with us and bearing with us at times and so forth. But we really appreciate it, and I definitely want to say thank you so much. Thank you for everything you guys do for us. Any other commissioners?
Yeah, please let your employees know that we appreciate them very much as well. If you would pass that on to them. I think we're a great team. We're going to keep on going strong. Thank you.
And y'all do make the city look good, and y'all make the commission look good. We do appreciate y'all too, from me.
Scott? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.